You've probably driven past a truck stop at 2 a.m. and noticed it. Long rows of semi-trucks sitting in the dark, engines humming, exhaust drifting into the cold air, cab lights glowing softly through fogged windows. And like most people, you might have wondered, why are they just burning fuel for no reason? Do they not realize how wasteful that looks? How are their tanks not empty by morning? Here's the surprising part, and it might catch you off guard. A fully loaded semi idling through the night can actually use less fuel than your daily drive to work. So, what's really happening inside that engine when the truck isn't even moving? Why do drivers let it run if there are heaters and auxiliary systems available? What would happen if they just shut it off? And why could a place like California hit you with a $25,000 fine for something that looks like nothing at all? Idling simply means the engine is on, but the truck isn't going anywhere. No movement, no miles being covered. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. In reality, the engine is still hard at work. It's maintaining oil pressure, regulating coolant temperature, charging the batteries, powering heating or air conditioning inside the cab, and keeping the air brake system pressurized. Every one of these critical functions depends on the engine staying alive, even when the truck is standing still. Shut the engine off, and all of that support disappears instantly. Oil pressure drops, temperatures fall, systems lose power, everything stops at once. So idling isn't the engine doing nothing, it's the engine doing everything except moving the truck. Think of it like your refrigerator running overnight. It's not working hard, just quietly maintaining the right conditions. That's exactly what the truck's engine is doing, keeping everything stable. Now here's where things start to surprise people. Most assume a massive diesel engine, 400 horsepower, built to haul 40 tons, must be guzzling fuel even when it's sitting still. That sounds logical, but it's actually not true. That idea comes from what you could call car thinking. Your car idles unevenly, warms up quickly, and isn't designed to sit running for long periods. But a semi-truck's diesel engine is built very differently. At idle, it runs at only about 600 to 700 revolutions per minute. That's incredibly low, barely more than a steady heartbeat. Compare that to your car, which might be spinning at 2,500 to 3,500 revolutions per minute when you accelerate onto the highway. A semi at idle is operating at less than a quarter of that speed. And at that slow pace, a typical Class 8 truck uses roughly 0.8 gallons of fuel per hour. It can vary depending on the engine and conditions, but that's a solid estimate. Let it run overnight for 8 hours, and you're looking at around 6 to 7 gallons total. To put that in perspective, a Ford F-150 can burn more fuel than that in just a 45-minute highway drive. So that huge engine sitting in a truck stop all night, it's actually one of the most fuel-efficient machines around in that moment. But this leads to the real question. If it's so efficient, why keep it running at all? That's the part most people completely overlook. Here's something most people don't realize. Diesel engines don't wear out the most during long highway drives. The real damage happens during cold starts. When a diesel engine sits turned off for hours, the oil slowly drains down from the upper parts of the engine, away from the valves, camshaft, rocker arms, and settles in the oil pan at the bottom. Then, the moment you start it again, those upper components are briefly left without proper lubrication. For a few critical seconds, it's metal rubbing against metal until the oil pump pushes everything back into place. Some commonly referenced industry estimates suggest that up to 90% of engine wear can happen during those first moments after a cold start. The exact number is debated, but one thing isn't. Cold starts are tough on engines. So every extra hour spent idling can actually mean one less cold start, one less moment of dry friction inside the engine. Over hundreds of thousands of miles, that trade-off quietly extends the engine's life in a big way. Now compare that to a regular passenger car. At idle, your car might use around 0.2 to 0.3 gallons of fuel per hour, less than a semi, simply because the engine is smaller. But here's the difference. Gasoline engines don't handle long idle periods nearly as well. They're designed for constant movement, speeding up, slowing down, adjusting. Sitting still for too long can actually work against them rather than help. Accelerate, cruise, coast, stop. That's how a typical car engine is meant to operate. It's built for constant change. Leave it idling too long, and problems start to build up. Carbon deposits form inside the combustion chamber, and over time, even the catalytic converter, the component that cleans the exhaust, can begin to degrade. Semi-truck diesel engines are a completely different story. They're designed with high compression and heavy-duty internal components, specifically built to handle long periods of low RPM operation without stress. They're not just oversized car engines. They follow an entirely different engineering philosophy. Then there's the APU, or Auxiliary Power Unit. It's a small separate diesel generator mounted on the truck that powers the cab's heating, air conditioning, and electronics without using the main engine. It's efficient, too, burning only about 0.2 to 0.3 gallons per hour, similar to a car at idle. Sounds like the perfect solution, right? Not quite. A good APU system can cost anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 to install. For large trucking fleets, that investment pays off over time. But for independent owner-operators, often working with tight margins, that upfront cost can be a serious hurdle. So instead, many drivers rely on idling the main engine, and economically, it still makes sense for them. Now here's the part most people never think about. Back in the 1950s and 1960s, none of these modern solutions existed. No APUs, no insulated sleeper berths, no independent diesel heaters. Drivers on long overnight hauls had it much tougher. They slept in bare, uninsulated cabs, sometimes bundled in sleeping bags, sometimes just wearing their coats while the engine ran, because there simply wasn't another option. By the 1970s, during the fuel crisis, when gas lines stretched for blocks and fuel was being rationed, truck stops painted a striking picture. Rows of 40 or 50 trucks would sit side by side, engines running all night long. At one point, the U.S. government looked into it and estimated that long-haul truck idling across the country was consuming nearly 1 billion gallons of fuel per year. A billion. Just sitting still. That staggering number is what finally sparked serious discussions around reducing idle time. But here's the catch. The infrastructure needed to replace idling, like electrified parking spaces or shore power hookups, barely existed until the early 2000s. For nearly 5 decades, idling wasn't just common, it was the only practical option. And here's the part that's easy to miss. You've been seeing idling solve real, critical problems your entire life, without even noticing. That refrigerated truck parked outside a grocery warehouse early in the morning, trailer quietly humming, it needs constant engine power to keep produce at around 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Shut it off, and the temperature starts rising within minutes. That school bus running before the kids even arrive? It's building air brake pressure so the system can release safely. It's not wasting time, it's preparing. That ambulance sitting outside the emergency room with the engine on? It's keeping life-saving equipment ready. Defibrillators charged, oxygen systems pressurized, everything set so crews can move instantly. That garbage truck idling between houses? The hydraulic compactor relies on steady pressure from the engine to reset after every pickup. That construction truck that never seems to shut off? It's often powering tools through a PTO, a power takeoff system directly linked to the engine. And that delivery truck double parked while the driver runs packages to the door? Same idea. The engine isn't just on, it's actively supporting the work happening around it. A refrigerated cargo bay can start losing temperature in under 4 minutes without power. One long stop is all it takes to spoil an entire load. That RV you hear humming through the night at a campsite? Chances are they're running the roof AC off the engine because they didn't hook up to external electricity. That charter bus sitting empty in a school parking lot with the engine still on? In many places, drivers are required to keep the interior at a safe temperature before passengers get back on. That farm tractor parked at the edge of a field while the farmer walks away? It might look idle, but it's still working. Equipment like an irrigation pump or hay baler depends on a steady RPM to function, and the tractor's engine provides that, even when the wheels aren't turning. In all of these cases, it might seem like nothing is happening, but the engine is quietly doing exactly what it needs to keep everything running. That airport ground crew truck sitting near the gate with the engine running? It's not just waiting, it's powering a hydraulic lift system for cargo loading, building the pressure needed before the next plane even arrives. Every one of these scenes looks like nothing is happening, but in reality, idling is doing essential behind-the-scenes work you probably never noticed. Now here's the real trade-off, because idling isn't free, and the industry knows it. A truck that idles heavily can burn an extra $5,000 to $10,000 in fuel each year. On top of that, there's increased engine wear, more frequent oil changes, and filter replacements that quickly add up. An idling semi produces a significant amount of nitrogen oxides every hour, which has pushed regulators to take action. Today, more than 30 U.S. states have laws to limit unnecessary idling, and in places like California, fines can reach as high as $25,000 per violation for fleets that ignore the rules. But the system is starting to evolve. Programs like SmartWay program now offer incentives and tax credits to help fleets install APUs, making that upfront cost easier to manage. At the same time, electrified truck parking is expanding fast. These are high-power hookups at truck stops, basically like plugging in a charger, but for an 80,000-pound truck. Instead of running the engine, drivers can connect directly to external power. And now, there are more than 10,000 of these electrified parking spaces across North America, giving drivers a real alternative to idling for the first time in decades. New electric semi-platforms from Kenworth and Freightliner now come equipped with battery packs large enough to power the entire cab overnight. No idling required. On top of that, modern predictive idle management software can monitor engine temperature in real time and automatically decide when it's safe to shut down and when it needs to keep running. It takes the pressure off drivers who just want to get some rest without worrying about damaging the engine. So that truck stop at 2 a.m., it's not a scene of wasted fuel or careless choices. It's a finely tuned system operating at its most efficient state, quietly keeping billions of dollars worth of equipment and cargo ready to move at sunrise. That low, steady hum you once thought was wasteful? It's not laziness. It's the sound of the supply chain on standby. And if diesel engines already seem more interesting than they look, just wait until you dive into what diesel fuel actually is. Because it's not just the other option at the gas station, it's an entirely different way of creating power.